Didn't say a word. I just sat there in the plastic chair across from my business partner while he slid the papers toward me and said, "Sign it, or I'll make sure you never work in this county again." I looked at the papers, then I looked at him, and I smiled. He didn't know what that smile meant. He thought it meant I was scared. My name is Scott. I'm 31 years old. Until 8 months ago, I co-owned a mid-sized HVAC and electrical contracting company in Harlan County, Kentucky, the kind of business that fixes heat pumps in January and runs new wiring through old farmhouses that haven't been touched since 1978. We had 16 employees, a solid reputation, and about $2.3 million in annual revenue. I built that from nothing after I got out of the Army. 4 years as a combat engineer, 2 deployments, and then I came home, got my contractor's license, and started with a used van and a tool bag. My partner, whose name I'll call Rex, came in 3 years ago. He had money. Startup capital I didn't have. He took 40% equity. I kept 60. On paper, it looked clean. It wasn't clean. The first thing I noticed was the fuel receipts. We ran 8 company trucks at the time. Every month I'd go through expenses, and for a while the fuel numbers looked a little high, but not crazy high. Diesel prices were up everywhere. I told myself that. Then one Thursday night I was working late on a bid and pulled up the fleet card statements going back 18 months. I sat at my desk for 2 hours doing math on a legal pad. When I was done, I had a number circled in red. $41,000. That's roughly what had been charged to our fleet cards at gas stations in a county we did no work in, billed to a truck that was parked at our shop every single one of those days because it had a bad alternator for 6 months before we got around to fixing it. I didn't say anything. I just started watching. Over the next 6 weeks, I kept quiet and kept my eyes open. What I found wasn't just fuel. There were vendor invoices from a supply company I'd never approved. We were being billed for materials that never showed up on any job site. I called 3 of those jobs personally, talked to the homeowners, asked them to walk me through what was installed. None of them could account for the materials on those invoices. The invoices were approved in Rex's signature. The vendor, when I looked it up, was registered in his wife's maiden name. I'd been working with a man who was stealing from me for at least 2 years, and he didn't know I knew. That was the part I held on to. In the Army, they taught us something about the value of timing. You don't move until you're ready. You don't tip your hand because you're impatient or angry. You gather, you prepare, you wait for the right moment, and then you move all at once. I was 27 the first time I crossed into a forward operating area with my unit, carrying a mine detection kit and a radio that cut out half the time. I learned fast that fear doesn't help you, and neither does rushing. What helps is information. What helps is patience. So I kept quiet. I kept going into the office every morning. I kept shaking Rex's hand. I hired an attorney named Patricia out of Lexington. She specialized in business litigation and forensic accounting cases. When I laid everything out for her, the fuel cards, the vendor fraud, the 18 months of records I quietly pulled together, she didn't blink. She'd seen worse, she said. She told me to keep gathering documentation and not to let Rex know anything was wrong. She also connected me with a forensic accountant named Howard, who spent 3 weeks going through every line item in our books, going back to when Rex first bought in. Howard's final report was 44 pages long. The total came to just over $187,000 in diverted funds. That's what he had taken from a business I had built from scratch. From a company that employed 16 people who had mortgages and kids and truck payments. From the savings of customers who trusted us to do honest work at an honest price. Patricia filed a civil suit quietly. She also sent a letter to the county sheriff's office because some of what Rex had done, specifically the fake vendor invoices, constituted fraud. We had everything documented: receipts, bank records, the LLC registration in his wife's maiden name, emails where Rex had written to the fake vendor arranging billing. Here's where it got complicated. Rex's older brother was the assistant county tax commissioner, not the sheriff, not a judge, but in a small county like ours, those relationships run sideways. His brother's name was Dale, and Dale had a buddy named Merle who worked at the sheriff's office as a senior deputy. When Patricia's letter went in, somebody apparently called somebody because within a week, Merle showed up at our shop. Not as a law enforcement matter, as a social call. He walked in on a Tuesday morning while I was reviewing a job estimate with one of my crew leads. Merle was in uniform, which I always think is interesting when someone wants to have a casual conversation. He asked if we could talk privately. I said sure. We went into the small office in the back. He sat down without being invited to. He took his hat off, set it on my desk, and looked at me like he was about to do me a favor. "I hear you've got some kind of dispute going on with your partner," he said. "That's a legal matter," I said. Right. He nodded slowly. "Look, Scott, I've known Rex's family a long time. Good people. I just want to make sure this whole thing doesn't get blown out of proportion. You know how attorneys are. They got every incentive to make a molehill into a mountain." I looked at him. "Rex is willing to have a conversation," Merle said. "Sit down, work it out, maybe settle up on some of the accounting questions. Keep it out of court. Keep it out of the news." "I appreciate you coming by," I said, "but I'm going to let my attorney handle it." He picked up his hat. His voice stayed friendly. "I just want to make sure you understand how things work around here. You're still kind of new to Harlan. You've built a nice business. It'd be a shame if things got complicated." He left it there, just hanging in the air between us. I called Patricia from the parking lot before I drove home. I told her exactly what was said, word for word. She told me to write it all down, date it, and email it to her within the hour so it was time-stamped. "That's witness tampering territory," she said. "Possibly. Depends on what happens next." "What do you think happens next?" I asked. "What do you think happens next?" I asked. "I think they'll try harder," she said. She was right. 2 weeks later, I got pulled over on Route 119, about a mile from my house. It was a Thursday evening, just past 6. I'd been at the shop since 7 that morning. The deputy who pulled me over was someone I'd never seen before. Young, maybe 25, wearing an expression that said he'd been told exactly what to do and was doing it. I was cited for a broken taillight. I have a dash cam. I've had one for 3 years, facing forward and backward both. The rear camera footage showed my taillights working perfectly every time I hit the brakes on that drive. I sent the footage to Patricia. The next week, the county inspections office sent us a letter saying our business license renewal was being reviewed for compliance issues. No specifics, just a review. Patricia made a call. There were no compliance issues. The review was dropped within 4 days. Then Rex asked for a meeting. It was at a restaurant in town, which I thought was interesting. Public place. I brought nothing. I wore a shirt with a breast pocket that I'd used before on hunts to hold my phone, camera facing out through the pocket fabric. In Kentucky, single-party consent means I can record any conversation I'm a part of. Patricia had reminded me of this twice. Rex was already seated when I got there. He had a folder in front of him and a look on his face that he probably thought came across as reasonable. "I want to settle this," he said, after we'd ordered coffee. "What are you proposing?" I asked. He opened the folder. "I'll pay back $22,000. We call it a bookkeeping reconciliation, no admission of wrongdoing, and you drop the suit." I looked at the papers. $22,000 out of $187,000. "I'm not interested in that," I said. He leaned forward a little. His voice dropped. "Scott, I'm giving you a way out of this that doesn't embarrass anybody. You don't want to know what this gets like when it gets ugly. Are you threatening me?" I asked. "I'm being honest with you." He leaned back. "You're a veteran, right? Army guy? Very respectable? But this county has got long memory, and I've got friends you don't know about. The contract work, the county bids, the inspection approvals, all of that runs through relationships. You don't have those relationships. I do." I picked up my coffee cup. I kept my face flat. "Think about your employees," he said. 16 people. "You want to blow this company up over a principle?" That was the moment he thought he had me. I could see it. He shifted back in his chair a little, like a man who just laid down the winning card. I said, "I'll think about it." I drove home, uploaded the video to an encrypted drive, and forwarded it to Patricia that night with a subject line that just said, "Got it." Here's what Rex didn't know. He didn't know that 3 weeks before that restaurant meeting, Patricia had already filed a complaint with the Kentucky State Police, specifically their financial crimes unit, bypassing the county sheriff's office entirely. He didn't know that Howard's 44-page forensic report had been submitted to the state attorney general's office as part of a separate fraud referral. He didn't know that the deputy who pulled me over had created a report that didn't match my dashcam footage, and that discrepancy had been flagged by the state police as part of a broader look into the county sheriff's office. He didn't know any of that because he'd been so busy making phone calls and sending deputies to my shop that he forgot to ask the most basic question. Who is this guy? Really? I'm not famous. I didn't work for the CIA. I wasn't some undercover operative. I was a combat engineer who came home, built a business, and along the way became very careful about documentation. Because in the Army, if something isn't written down, it didn't happen. And if you don't have the paper trail, you lose the argument every single time. I had the paper trail. Patricia called me on a Tuesday afternoon in early March. I was in a truck on the way to a job site, and I pulled over to take the call. State police executed a search warrant at Rex's home office this morning, she said. I sat there in the truck on the side of the road and watched a pickup pass me going the other direction. They also served Merle, she said. He's been suspended pending an investigation into the traffic stop and the tampering conversation you documented. And Dale? I asked. Rex's brother at the tax commissioner's office. His office has been referred to the state ethics board, she said. Nothing criminal yet, but the referral's in. I didn't say anything for a moment. You did everything right, Patricia said. You documented, you waited, and you didn't let them rattle you. I had good training, I said. Rex was charged with wire fraud, business fraud, and theft by deception. Total restitution ordered by the court, $187,400. The criminal case took 11 months. He pled guilty the week before trial was scheduled to begin, which is what Patricia had predicted almost from the start. His attorney tried to negotiate the restitution down. The judge didn't move. Merle was terminated from the sheriff's office. The false traffic stop citation was vacated. There was no criminal charge filed against him in the end. The evidence on tampering was strong enough to cost him his job, but not quite enough for a prosecution, which bothered me for a while. Patricia said that happens. Not every wrong thing gets a courtroom. Some wrongs just get consequences. Dale resigned from the tax commissioner's office 3 weeks after the ethics board referral. He moved his family to Tennessee. I don't know what he does now, and I don't spend much time thinking about it. The business survived. That's the thing I'm most proud of. I had to work hard to reassure employees while all of this was unfolding, because word gets around a small county, and by the spring, everyone in town knew there was something legal happening with the company. I held a staff meeting. I told them the truth, that there had been financial misconduct by one of the owners, that it was being handled through proper legal channels, and that the company was solvent and their jobs were secure. Every single one of them stayed. We replaced Rex's equity stake by buying him out. His ownership was unwound as part of the settlement, his interest valued at zero given the fraud judgment. I brought in a new operational partner, a woman named Deanna who I'd known through a contractors association for years and who knew the business inside and out. She bought in at 25%. Clean deal. Clean paperwork. Our attorney drafted everything. The first winter after all of it was resolved, I drove out to the site of a farmhouse job we'd done years back, before Rex, when it was just me and one other guy, and we were working 18-hour days trying to prove we could do this. I just sat there in my truck in the gravel driveway and looked at the house. The lights were on. There was smoke coming from the chimney. People were warm in there because we'd done our job right. That's what it was always about. I think about Rex sometimes, and I don't feel what you might expect. I don't feel triumphant. I mostly just feel tired, the way you feel after you've carried something heavy for a long time and then finally set it down. What he did was a choice he made for money, and it cost him far more than he got. The math on that kind of decision never works out. What I know is this: being quiet is not the same as being weak. Patience isn't the same as passivity. When someone counts on the fact that you won't fight back, that you'll take the settlement offer, sign the papers, walk away quietly because you're worried about your reputation or your county relationships, or 16 people who depend on your paycheck, they're betting on fear. I was a combat engineer in 2 combat zones. I diffused IEDs in temperatures that would wilt most people. I came home and built something from nothing with my own hands. Fear was never really part of my vocabulary. The papers Rex slid across that table were the last thing he ever got to push in my direction. I signed nothing. I gave up nothing. And when it was over, the business was mine. The judgment was in my name. And Rex was explaining himself to a federal magistrate. Sometimes the best thing you can do when someone underestimates you is simply let them. Let them believe the story they've built about who you are. Let them make their calls and send their deputies and slide their paperwork. Then let the truth do what truth does. I still think about the moment Rex slid those papers across the table. The way he leaned back in his chair like a man who already knew how the story ended. He had a deputy in his corner, a brother in county government, and 18 months of stolen money already spent. He thought the only move left for me was to take whatever scraps he was offering and disappear quietly. What he never accounted for was the 18 months I'd spent watching him, writing things down, pulling statements, cross-referencing fuel receipts against truck repair logs at 11 o'clock at night while he was out living off money that wasn't his. He mistook my silence for surrender. That mistake cost him everything. I've thought a lot about why people like Rex do what they do. It's not just greed, though greed is in there. It's a belief, deep and mostly unconscious, that the people around them won't fight back, that the quiet ones are weak, that a guy who comes to work every day, keeps his head down, and doesn't make noise is a guy you can take from. Rex had done the math on me and decided I was that guy. He was wrong about the math. The thing the Army gave me, more than any technical skill, more than any tactical training, was an understanding of what integrity actually costs. Not the word, the practice. Integrity means you document the fuel receipts even when it's tedious. It means you call the homeowners and ask the uncomfortable questions. It means you hire the forensic accountant and sit with a 44-page report and let the numbers tell you the truth even when the truth is ugly. It's not glamorous work, it doesn't feel heroic, it just feels like doing what's right when nobody's watching and nothing is forcing you to. That's the thing I keep coming back to. Rex thought he was taking from a business. What he was really doing was betting that I wasn't the kind of man who would see it through. He was betting I'd calculate the cost, the legal fees, the time, the stress on my employees, the county relationships, and decide it wasn't worth it. A lot of people would have made that calculation and walked away. I understand why. It's exhausting to fight something like that. It's a long road with no guarantee at the end. But Patricia once told me something during one of our early calls that I wrote down and kept. She said the people who defraud small business owners are counting on exactly one thing, that you'll be too tired to be thorough. Thoroughness is what beats them every time. Thoroughness. Patience. The willingness to do the unglamorous work without anyone cheering you on. Those aren't exciting qualities. They don't make for a great highlight reel. But they're what got $187,000 in restitution ordered by a court. They're what kept 16 people employed. They're what sent Rex to explain himself to a federal magistrate instead of a mediation room. I'm not telling this story because I came out ahead, though it did. I'm telling it because I think a lot of people are sitting somewhere right now with a folder of evidence and a gut feeling and a voice in their head telling them it's too hard, the other person has too many connections, the county is too small, the risk is too big. I was that person. I sat in that truck on the side of Route 119 after getting pulled over for a taillight that wasn't broken, and I felt the weight of it. Then I called Patricia and I told her exactly what happened, and I kept going. The truth doesn't need to be loud to be effective. It just needs to be documented.